4 spine-chilling uber-horror stories that uncover sinister secrets and forbidden truths revealed. The streets of Maplewood Heights shimmered under the eerie glow of the streetlights, casting unsettling shadows that danced like phantoms. Rebecca, a single mother driving for Uber late at night, had long embraced the quiet beauty of her suburban haven. But tonight, unease seeped into the air like a chilling fog. As she picked up her first passenger, the man's eyes darted nervously, words tumbling out of his mouth like dark breadcrumbs. "Trust no one," he hissed. There's a darkness lurking beneath this perfect facade. A shiver crawled up her spine as she dropped him off, dismissing his warnings. She returned to her routine, the reassuring hum of her car and the familiar neighborhoods swaddling her like a warm blanket. Yet, the night felt thicker, shadows felt deeper. Was she being watched? The quiet streets whispered secrets that slithered into her consciousness. Before she knew it, she was swept up in a wave of dread. Strange sounds echoed outside her door, the rustle of leaves like hushed voices sharing sinister gossip. Cleaning her car the next evening, she stumbled upon a series of napkins tucked away in the glove compartment. "They're watching you," one warned. "Find the truth before it finds you." Panic surged through her veins, a cold dread that twisted her stomach into knots. Were these just remnants of other passengers' minds unhinged by the dark? Or was something truly amiss? Before she could grasp any answers, her neighbors once regarded with palpable warmth began displaying odd behavior. Mr. Caldwell, a towering figure in the community, shot her icy glares from across the street, eyes devoid of the warmth she had always known. Was it paranoia taking root? Or was the man onto something? The horror peaked when, after an evening marred by unsettling news reports of missing children, Rebecca rushed home only to find Danny had vanished. Heart pounding like a drum in her chest, she dialed 911, but futile assurances dripped from the phone's speaker. "We're short-staffed," the officer replied flatly, leaving her trembling with anger and fear. Time felt suspended as she clawed at shadows in search of her son. "I'll find you, Danny," she whispered, her voice cracking, desperation clawing at her throat. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Fueled by fear, she dug into the tangled web of her community's past, interviewing neighbors who suddenly turned hostile. Their smiles became masks hiding predator-like intentions. Whispered folklore about the disappearance of children over the years clawed at her sanity. Each story steeped in a terrifying truth the friendly faces she once knew melted into something grotesque. There was a monster in Maplewood Heights, and it likely wore a face she recognized. With adrenaline coursing through her body, she found herself outside Mr. Caldwell's house, heart racing, breath hitching in her throat. But as she gathered the courage to knock, a chilling realization settled upon her. This wasn't just a battle for her son, it was a confrontation with her deepest fears. She could sense it. The shadows around her thickened, whispering in a chorus of dread that left a lingering chill down her spine. Just as she raised her fist, a voice from the darkness murmured, "You should have listened." The hairs on her neck stood straight, her heart thundering in her ears. What lay beyond that door? Would she find Danny, or the very truth that could swallow her whole? The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway that stretched into darkness. An unsettling odor wafted towards her, something like decay, mixed with the scent of damp earth. It was the kind of smell that made her stomach churn. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she stepped inside, the floor creaking ominously beneath her weight. "Mr. Caldwell," she called out, her voice shaking. The silence that answered felt like an abyss, swallowing her words. Was he home? Did he know where Danny was? Panic gripped her like a vice as she peered deeper into the murky shadows, only able to see a heavy-set figure standing at the end of the hall. The figure shifted, revealing a monstrous silhouette illuminated by a single flickering bulb. His face twisted into a grotesque mask of confusion followed by an unsettling grin. "You shouldn't be here, Rebecca," he whispered, his voice low and sinister, dripping with malice. "What are you?" Before she could finish, he lunged towards her, and Rebecca stumbled back against the door, barely managing to slam it shut. She pressed herself against it, breath hitching in her throat. Her mind raced, fighting against the urge to break down in tears. His laughter echoed through the wood, a deep, rumbling sound that reverberated in her bones. She turned and sprinted down the hall, gasping for air as she fumbled for the front door, the world outside a longed-for oasis of safety. But as she reached for the knob, a chilling realization hit her: the door wouldn't budge. It felt locked from the outside. Desperation clawed at her throat. "Danny!" she shouted, the name echoing in the house. Nothing. No answer. The walls seemed to close in, whispering secrets of despair. Foolish doubt swept in. Had the warning signs all been real? The neighbors had become figures of dread, lurking just outside her window, watching her every move. Amid her panic, Rebecca glimpsed a shadow moving down the hallway. Heart racing, she turned to face it. A small, frail figure emerged from the darkness. "Mom." It was Danny. He looked disheveled, eyes wide with terror, as if he'd seen something that shattered his childhood innocence. "Danny," she whispered, rushing toward him, but then she froze. Behind him, Mr. Caldwell appeared again, his expression a mask of twisted amusement. "You shouldn't have dug too deep," he said softly. Rebecca's heart skipped, a chill setting in. "What are you talking about?" She grasped Danny's hand, eyes darting between the monster in the hallway and her son. "We need to leave." But before she could pull Danny away, Caldwell stepped forward, blocking their escape. "The truth, Rebecca, it's never what you expect." His eyes glimmered with a sinister glint. "You have to know, those who understand can never leave." "Not truly." "What do you mean?" Her voice trembled, a mix of confusion and fear. There was something veiled in his words, a warning, a threat. In that moment, the sound of laughter, light and playful, drifted down the hall like a haunting melody, sending icy fingers down her spine. It echoed with the innocence of children, gnawing at her sanity. She could feel the walls closing in, the air thickening, suffocating her. Danny clutched her hand tighter, sensing her dread. "Mom, what is happening?" The laughter continued, a cruel reminder of lost innocence. "You must choose wisely," Caldwell hissed, as the darkness around him seemed to expand, swallowing the hall. "Run," she shouted, pulling Danny to turn and flee. But as they raced back toward the door, laughter echoed louder, growing. Shadows writhed and slithered around her, tendrils reaching for them. Would they make it out alive, or would the darkness claim them both? A moment was all it took for everything to change. As she gripped the door handle, pushing with every ounce of strength, a disembodied voice sang from the heart of the shadows. "Don't forget to trust no one." Rebecca's heart plunged. Was the worst yet to come? What unspeakable truth awaited them if the door finally swung open? The door rattled violently beneath her grip. She pushed harder, but it remained unyielding. Panic boiled inside her, a vicious thing that clawed at her throat. "Danny, we need to find another way." Her voice trembled as she pulled him close. Glancing back at the encroaching darkness, Caldwell stood like a sentinel, watching them, his smile twisting further with delight. "You can't run from the truth, Rebecca. It has a way of catching up to you." The laughter morphed, twisting, echoing, bubbling from every corner as if 100 children had joined the fray. Each peal stung her ears, sending prickles of dread dancing down her spine. "Mom," Danny whimpered, pulling at her shirt, his voice so fragile that it shattered her resolve. "Stay close," she whispered fiercely, her heart hammering so hard it felt like it might burst. She sprinted past Caldwell, dragging Danny along. But another wave of shadows surged across the floor, wrapping around her ankles like icy hands. She stumbled, pulling Danny down with her as they fell to the ground, the laughter growing louder, mocking. With desperation fueling her, Rebecca crawled, dragging Danny away from the writhing tendrils. "We have to get out." She scanned the walls for a window, anything to escape the claustrophobic grasp of that house. Caldwell loomed, the shadows swirling around him, coiling into grotesque forms, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. "Do you know what happens to those who seek the truth?" he crooned, his voice dripping with sickening amusement. "You just might find yourself part of the game." Rebecca turned, locking eyes with Danny. "We have to trust each other. Stay quiet, and follow me." They scrambled down the hallway, her heart racing as dread coiled around her thoughts. Goosebumps prickled her skin, the air heavy with something more than fear, a dreadful certainty that something watched from the depths of the darkness. Mom. Danny's voice was a whisper, quaking with terror. What if he catches us? Her chest tightened at his words. He won tea. Stay with me. They rounded another corner, and a single dim light flickered precariously. Fronting it was a door, slightly ajar, casting a thin beam of illumination across the floor. That way, she urged, her breath coming in sharp gasps. As they neared the door, a horrifying crunch marked their steps, shards of glass beneath her shoes. Her breath caught. She glanced down, a patch of deep crimson staining the ground. Danny, look. But before he could respond, Caldwell's laughter erupted again, a guttural sound that reverberated in the hallway, shaking the very air around them. Why do you care what's beneath your feet, Rebecca? You might like what you find once you move past the glass. Ignoring him, Rebecca yanked the door open, flinging them both into the room beyond. Darkness swallowed her whole. She fumbled for a light switch, but only a sliver of moonlight crept through a grimy window, illuminating more shards on the floor, along with furniture turned upside down and strewn across the room. Is this his secret? Danny breathed, looking around with wide, horrified eyes. Mom, it looks like someone was she urged, feeling a dizzying sensation wash over her. The darkness felt alive, pulsing with a sinister energy. A chill crept across her skin as she reached towards the window, pulling back the drapes, desperate for light. Outside loomed an imposing figure, impossibly tall, framed in shadow, a silhouette. Was it Caldwell? Could he have followed them? Danny, we need to go, she murmured, but her voice trembled under the weight of her conviction. As she turned back to Danny, a flicker of movement by the door caught her eye. Caldwell stood there, grinning wider than ever, a knife glinting in his hand, threaded with crimson. You didn't really think you could leave, did you? Rebecca's blood chilled. Danny, run. But as her son bolted towards the hallway, Caldwell extended his arm. There's no escaping the truth, he hissed, and in that moment, the shadows slithered closer, their whispers tightening around Rebecca's throat. What was the truth she had unearthed? And at what cost? Just as she lunged to follow her son, a horrific scream echoed from the hallway, a piercing cry that rang out, sending shockwaves through the night. Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but a horrifying thought gripped her heart. What if it was too late? What awaited them out in the darkness? Rebecca hesitated, paralyzed by the dread clawing at her insides. Danny's frantic footsteps faded into the distance, slicing through the suffocating silence that clung to her like a noose. She couldn't lose him. Not now. Danny, she shouted, panic lacing her voice. The shadows slinked around her, pulsating with a life of their own. Caldwell's laughter seeped into her thoughts, each chuckle scraping against her sanity. You're going to need more than a scream to save him, Rebecca, he taunted, twirling the knife in his hands, the blade catching the moonlight like a serpent poised to strike. Do you even know where you are? Caldwell stepped forward, his shadow expanding, swallowing the room whole. In reflex, Rebecca backed up against the wall, desperately searching for an escape. Her eyes darted to the window, the outside world offering nothing but an ink-black void. Let him go, she cried, her heartbeat drumming in her ears like a freight train. The thought of Danny lost, vulnerable to the horrors lurking beyond her sight, spurred her into action. The knife didn't gleam with promise. It shone with the weight of death. End it. He beckoned, sighing with mock sympathy. Set him free, if you dare. But are you prepared to uncover the layers wrapped around your soul? With a surge of adrenaline, Rebecca broke from her stupor. She whirled, slamming the door behind her, the heavy wood a feeble barrier against the malevolence that dripped from Caldwell's fingertips. She forced herself to focus, every nerve alight as she sprinted back into the hallway, an environment shifting, thrumming with danger. But Caldwell's laughter chased her, a haunting melody that echoed against the walls, wrapping around her heart until it felt as if it might crush under the weight. You think you can outrun fate? Danny, she called out again, her voice almost swallowed by the dark. The silence was relentless, mocking. Where was he? Then she heard a muffled whimper, coming from the far end of the hallway. Fueled by instinct, she raced toward the sound, the shadows retreating in her wake, yet they still pulled at her, begging her to succumb to their embrace. As she turned the corner, she spotted him huddled against the wall, trembling, tears glistening in the dull light. Relief surged through her, but it was quickly replaced by a stark realization. Shadows were creeping closer, slithering closer to Danny as he shrank back, consumed by fear. "Danny!" Her shout pierced through the silence. She dashed to him, cradling his face in her hands. He was cold and shaking, eyes wide with terror. "Mom, he's coming." No, no, she looked behind her, dread pooling in her stomach. Caldwell was advancing, his footsteps smooth, like an executioner at work. "We need to get out of here now." Danny turned to her, eyes full of fright. "What if we can't?" Her breath hitched at the thought. She had to find a way. There had to be an exit. "We'll find it. Together." She pulled him to his feet, and they backed away, eyes darting for any sign of hope. But the walls seemed to close in, warping and shifting like they were alive. Caldwell laughed again, low and sinister. "We'll see how long you last, Rebecca. The truth waits patiently, but it thrives on fear." The shadow wrapped around him pulsed in rhythm with his chilling words, warping and folding like fabric. With fear dripping from every pore, Rebecca grabbed Danny's hand tightly. "Run with me." They lunged forward, the walls closing in like fangs closing around their escape, the darkness shrinking and elongating their path. They plunged deeper into the heart of the house, the laughter echoing behind them, a cruel reminder that they weren't alone. But a sudden crash reverberated through the air. A sharp sound like shattering glass filled the corridor. "This way!" Rebecca yelled, jerking Danny toward a door that had swung open, a glimmer of hope. And just as they dashed through, Caldwell's voice hissed behind them. "You won't escape that easily." Rebecca's heart raced, but as the door slammed shut, a low keening sound erupted from the walls, shaking them like bones rattled in a grave. Inside the room, a strange glow illuminated the edges, revealing broken furniture and a distant flicker that felt almost familiar. "What is this place?" Danny asked, his voice barely a whisper. But Rebecca was too busy trying to quell the rising storm of fear in her chest. She had to know. Slowly, she turned to face the source of the light. A broken mirror reflected their distorted images back at them. "Maybe," she murmured, "maybe we're not the only ones trapped here." As the realization sank in, a figure began to materialize behind them in the mirror's depths. Its face was a swirl of familiar features, warped and twisted. Who is that?" Danny whimpered, clinging to her. "I don't know." Rebecca barely breathed, her blood running cold. Could this be another echo of the past? A laugh, soft yet predatory, curled around her mind. "Welcome. Do you now see the truth?" What other horrors were waiting for them in the dark? Time held its breath as Rebecca stared into the mirror, the figure twisting and warping like smoke. She felt frozen, unable to tear her gaze away from the dark abyss that hungrily reflected their worst fears. "Mom, we have to go," Danny pleaded, his voice wrapped in anxious urgency, every word sharp like glass. But Rebecca was paralyzed, her heart thrumming in her ears. What if the figure held the key to escaping Caldwell's nightmare? What if it knew something she didn't? Suddenly, the reflection shifted. A flash of a smile, filled with malice, curled its lips. The laugh that followed resonated within the room, as if shattering the fragile boundary between their world and the shadows lurking just out of sight. Such a bond between mother and child. The figure spoke, voice dripping with mockery. "But in here, your love is as fragile as the glass that contains our sorrow." "Stop it," Rebecca shouted back, trying to reclaim her strength, but her voice wavered, exposing the fear gnawing at her insides. "What do you want?" The figure leaned closer, eyes digging into her soul. "To show you the truth. To unravel the lies you cling to so desperately." Danny instinctively stepped back, tugging at her sleeve. "Mom, I don't like this. We need to leave." The room began to pulse, the walls throbbing as if breathing in rhythm with the figure's taunts. The windows dimmed, the light bending back into darkness. The shadows flared, attacking with icy fingers that sought to enwrap them both. "Face it, Rebecca. You are just like your father. You think love can protect you. But here, love is a weapon. Back off." Rebecca screamed, the hollow hallways echoing her desperation. She needed to break the mirror's hold, the twisted charm that threatened to consume her. With newfound fury, she charged towards it, Danny's cry cutting through her adrenaline-fueled rush. "Mom, wait." But the reflection rippled, dissolving as she slapped her hands against the glass. The shift triggered a blinding flash, the weaponized light exploding through the darkness. And then, silence. The hiss that filled the air morphed into a guttural growl, the mirror shards falling away to reveal a corridor drenched in darkness that pulsed with a life of its own. Cautiously, Rebecca glanced back. The figure melted behind her, a grotesque reminder of the truths she feared to face. "You can't escape who you are," it whispered, its voice a wind that felt all too cold against her skin. Gripping Danny's hand, she hesitated. Should they flee deeper into the darkness or risk facing what lay behind? "Rebecca, please, let us go," Danny urged, tugging her toward the unknown. Their path narrowed, shadows rippling like a live thing, hard against the stone walls. To their left, a door trembled, as if something inside yearned for their attention. To the right, the faint sound of laughter trickled down the corridor, a chilling echo of Caldwell's taunts. "Which way?" she breathed, an ache in her chest growing heavier. Instinct wrestled against hope within her, pulling her in opposite directions. "Danny, you know we can't stay here," he cried, gripping her tighter, pleading. Just then, a whisper curled through the air, searching for them. Choose wisely." Rebecca inhaled sharply, fear constricting her lungs. Both paths beckoned her, each trailing horrors beneath their surface. "Are you ready?" she whispered to Danny, her heart racing. "I don't know." He hushed, eyes darting wildly. The laughter erupted again, louder this time, echoing further into the abyss. It felt like it was closing in, a vengeful force that drew them both into a trap. She had to decide or be caught in the never-ending grasp of whatever awaited in the dark. With a trembling breath, she steeled herself, refusing to let this nightmare claim any more of her strength. I guess we'll go left," she finally said, although doubt gnawed at her heart. As they moved forward, the shadows tightened around them, the air thickening with dread. The laughter rang in her ears, pulsating like a heartbeat. What awaited them further down this path? And why did it feel like a sinister invitation? As they slipped deeper into the murky passage, Rebecca felt the slick stone beneath her fingertips like the skin of something alive, pulsating with an unseen heartbeat. The laughter lessened, but didn't disappear. It wrapped around them, a whispered promise of terror, ready to drop onto them like a weight. Mom Danny's voice quaked beside her, his grip tightening to the point of pain. What if it's a trap? Rebecca wanted to reassure him. She wanted to tell him they would be okay. But a nagging doubt clawed at her mind. She had always shielded him from the horrors of life, trying to act the protector. But now, as they wandered further into the heart of darkness, what if she was leading them into a nightmare she couldn't escape? The corridor twisted, each section sloping downward like a funnel, dragging them closer to whatever lay at its base. The laughter morphed, shaping itself into cries and whispers, distorting into anguished screams that were instantly swallowed by the shadows. "Mom, listen." Danny stopped, his wide eyes narrowing, scanning their surroundings. "What's that?" She strained to hear over the cacophony of their fears swirling in the air. There, to the right, a soft thud echoed a rhythm that felt all too alive. "I don't know, Danny," she whispered, forcing her voice to remain steady. "But we need to keep moving." But he didn't move. His gaze transfixed on the trembling door just a few feet away. "It sounds scared," he said. "Or hungry," she thought, panic clawing at her throat. The door seemed to respond to her fear, shivering as a raspy breath slid from its edges, echoing as if whatever lay beyond was pleading persistently to be released. "Mom, we should open it," he said, hope spiraling through his tone. Rebecca's stomach turned. How naive, how desperate. "I don't think it's safe," she insisted, stepping back, but the shadows grew restless, twitching with anticipation, as if urging them forward. "Please," Danny begged, his eyes glistening in the darkness. The weight of his plea wrapped around her like a noose, tightening with each second. Was he right? Did they dare confront whatever was hiding behind that door? The corridor seemed to pulse with life now, the walls whispering secrets. "Choose, Rebecca," a hiss slithered through the air, wrapping around her mind. "What keeps you bound to your past?" The laughter erupted again, shrill and echoing, drowning her thoughts. A thunderous crash rattled through the passage, rattling the door with violent urgency. "Mom, let us go. Now," Danny yelled, the fear turning his voice hoarse. In that moment, Rebecca made a decision. She turned, wrenching Danny with her, determination igniting within her gut. "We need to get out of here. No turning back." But as they sprinted away, a chilling realization washed over her. The laughter transformed into guttural sobs, each note striking fear into her heart. She could feel something pursuing them, a shadow that glided just out of reach, patient and relentless. "Don't look back," she urged him, but as they ran, each step heavier than the last, the corridor shifted, the passage closing in as if swallowing their very essence. A flicker of light caught her eye. An exit? Breathing heavily, Rebecca charged ahead, but the shadows twisted. The laughter morphed into her own voice, mocking as it faded away. "You'll never escape." In her heart, Rebecca sensed a truth forming. Caldwell wasn't just a nightmare. It was a curse, entwined with their lives. "Mom, what is happening?" Danny's panic brought her back to reality. Turning to face what loomed in the darkness, Rebecca felt the ground tremble beneath her. The end of this corridor wasn't what she had hoped for. Instead, it beckoned a new horror. Would they survive the truth waiting on the other side? As they teetered on the edge of the unknown, the darkness split open before them, pushing them into something unthinkable, and what lay beyond would forever shatter their bond. The darkness enveloped them, and Rebecca felt her heart race. She grabbed Danny's hand tighter, pulling him close as they stumbled through the entryway. The world shifted, colors bleeding into shadows, shapes twisting in the chaotic gloom. This wasn't just another room. It was something alive, pulsating with a grotesque energy, mocking their every breath. The flickering light revealed a chamber, expansive and cavernous. The walls seemed to breathe, undulating as if the stone itself was alive, craving their fear. Skulls and bones littered the ground, remnants of those who had come before them, their hollow eyes judging, whispering of doom. "Mom, it's too dark," Danny murmured. His voice quivered, a fragile sound that faded into the chilling air. "I know. Just stay close to me," Rebecca whispered, forcing herself to breathe. Each inhalation felt like inhaling despair itself. Underfoot, a soft squelching sound greeted them, a sneaky reminder of where they were. She hesitated, her foot half lifting. "What is that?" "The ground. It's moving," Danny said, eyes widening. He took a step back, his gaze darting toward the far end of the hall. Something breathed behind them, thick and wet, a sound like the sloshing of thick, sticky fluid. Rebecca's blood ran cold. They were not alone. "Run," she screamed, shattering the suffocating silence. They dashed forward, dodging shadows that stretched toward them with eager fingers, reaching to drag them down into the abyss. They reached the far wall, and Rebecca slammed her palms against it, desperately searching for a pivot point or a clue, anything. But as she pressed harder, the stone felt soft and pliable like a dead animal beneath her hands. A tumultuous roar erupted overhead, shaking the walls. Suddenly, a figure surged into view, a grotesque creature, all twisted limbs and jagged teeth, dripping with a viscous fluid. Its eyes were hollow, pools of endless black, and it grinned with a sadistic glee. "You're too late, Rebecca," it hissed, a mocking tone that curled deep into her bones. "The curse of Caldwell binds you now. You brought him here. You'll never leave without him." "Danny, back!" she yelled, shoving him behind her. The creature's breath smelt of rot and decay, wrapping around her as fear pulsed through her veins. "Caldwell?" Danny echoed, confusion rippling through his voice. "Who is Caldwell?" But the creature reveled in his ignorance. "Just a shadow of your past, a darker side you thought could be buried." It stepped closer, its elongated fingers twitching with anticipation. "You must choose, Rebecca. Embrace him or lose everything." Rebecca's mind reeled. Caldwell, what did it mean? She could feel the shadows tightening around them, whispering tales of betrayal, loss, and grief. "No, we're not playing your sick games," she shouted, clenching her fists. Desperation clawed at her throat. The floor trembled again, sundered by an unseen force. "You cannot outrun your past." The creature screeched, lunging towards them, its maw gaping wide, ready to consume them whole. She turned, dragging Danny roughly behind her as the chamber began to collapse upon itself. the ceiling shuddering with echoes of terror and despair. They had to escape this wretched place and whatever horror awaited them. But even as they dashed forward, their laughter burst forth, frantic and jubilant, wrapping around them until it felt like a tangible thing, suffocating, relentless. "Mom, don't leave me," Danny cried. The horror of the moment was crashing down around them. With every ounce of strength left, Rebecca faced the darkness, a flicker of resolve igniting within. They would rise above the horrors, whatever it took. But as she ran, a sliver of doubt pierced through her resolve. What if the way out was also the way to Caldwell? As they neared a slatted door appearing at the end of the hall, something unseen clung to their heels, fangs bared, hungry for their failure. Would they cross the threshold into salvation or plunge deeper into despair? The exit beckoned, but a sudden chill slithered through her spine, whispering, "Your choice will seal your fate." What awaited them on the other side? They reached the slatted door. The wood trembled like a living entity under their frantic touch. Rebecca threw her shoulder against it, feeling the rough grain bite into her skin. It cracked open slightly, a thin sliver of light piercing the thick darkness behind them. Behind that light was the promise of escape, but it flickered as if mocking their desperation. "Mom, please." Danny's voice was a high-pitched wail strung with terror. He tugged at her arm, his wide eyes reflecting the fearful shadows clawing at their backs. I know. Hold on tight." Ignoring the sweat dripping down her spine, Rebecca wedged her body against the door, forcing it wider. The shadows surged, almost sentient as they grasped and writhed, eager to claw back what had eluded them. Suddenly, the creature's gnarled hands shot out from the gloom, snagging her ankle. A serrated knife edge of panic shot through her. "No," she screamed, kicking free and feeling the creature's damp breath wash over her like a wave of rot. With one final push, the door creaked and groaned, giving way just enough for them to squeeze through. Danny slipped in first, but the moment Rebecca followed, the door slammed shut behind them, a deafening boom echoing across the silence that settled immediately. They stumbled forward into a narrow corridor that reeked of mold and betrayal. The air felt heavier here, forcing her to breathe with difficulty. As they moved, gnawing doubts churned within her. Caldwell, was he a monster, or something more? "Mom, what do we do now?" Danny whimpered, his voice trembling with uncertainty. The darkness was thick in this new space. Shadows hugged the corners tightly, as if conspiring against them. "We keep going. We need to find a way out of here." But even as the words left her mouth, doubt nagged at her mind. What if this path only led them deeper into Caldwell's grasp? They stepped lightly. Each sound magnified the creak of the floorboards, the whisper of her own shattered resolve. Evanescence shimmered around them, as sudden shadows flared then faded, teasing her senses. Just ahead, a flicker of light beckoned them, a steady glow seeping from under an intricately carved door. The edges of the doorframe glimmered with golden light, its beauty somewhat deceiving. It felt saccharine against the grimness enveloping them. "Let us try that one," Rebecca said, almost breathless with a mix of hope and trepidation. They approached, an eerie stillness descended, so thick it seemed to raise the hair on the back of her neck. She pushed against the door, and it swung open with an unsettling creak, revealing a room unlike any they had encountered. The walls were lined with mirrors, reflections multiplying until she couldn't tell which was her and which was an illusion. Each mirrored self smiled mockingly, showing versions of sorrow and despair she never wanted to see. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, shrouded in darkness, with an intricately carved box that pulsed as if it held a heart. "Mom, should we?" Danny whispered, his small voice tiny compared to the vastness of the room. She swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the box. A scream echoed in her mind, a reminder of the pool of despair waiting on the other side if they made the wrong choice. "Let us be careful, Danny. We don't know what that is." Just as she stepped back, a soft, sinister voice reverberated around her. "Open it and know your truth, or leave and lose him forever." Her heart raced. The choice lay heavy on her shoulders. Caldwell, it seemed, had left them an ultimatum. "Mom," Danny cried, just as shadows began emerging from the mirrors, curling around them like smoke, eager to drag them into the abyss. In that moment, her options stood before her. dive into the unknown and confront what lay ahead or flee deeper into madness. Yet time was slipping away, the shadows urging her forward, promising danger. Was she ready to find out Caldwell's secret, or was it already too late? With her pulse echoing in her ears, she opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came. The shadows danced closer, suffocating there. Hope, and the room began to vibrate with anticipation. Choose, the voice hissed, clear yet haunting, and with her heart pounding in her chest, she realized time was running out. What would she decide? As the room pulsed with the haunting voice echoing against the mirrored walls, Rebecca's heart thundered in her chest. She felt time stretch like a rubber band about to snap, the weight of the decision clamping down hard around her. Behind her, shadows writhed and twisted, their long fingers reaching for Danny with an insatiable hunger. "Mom, I don't want to lose you." Danny's voice rang out, filled with pure, unfiltered panic. His tiny frame trembled, and for a moment, it seemed as if the shadows hesitated, curious, calculating, almost aware of their own malevolence. The box pulsed erratically like the heartbeat of something alive. It was as if it could sense her indecision, drawing closer to her, whispering promises of buried truths that twisted her insides. What truth? What would it reveal? Secrets about Caldwell? Or something darker, hidden within her own soul? The mirrors reflected distorted images of herself, her eyes wide with fear, lips trembling as if they were shouting without sound. With a shaky breath, she pressed her palm against the box's cool surface, feeling a low hum vibrate against her skin. It vibrated like a warning, the remaining shadows recoiling slightly. "Maybe," she muttered, her mind racing. "No, Mom." Danny's voice was raw, a thin line taut with fear. "Please don't. I don't want to." The shadows flickered at his distress, eager to feed off it. They lunged forward, desperate to pull him away from her uncertain grasp. Rebecca turned, anger blending with fear, fierce protectiveness igniting inside her. "Danny, step back," she hissed, teeth gritted. With a sharp inhale, she suddenly yanked her hand away from the box, resisting the urge to crack it open. A guttural roar erupted from the mirrors, their surfaces distorting further as if responding to her defiance. The room seemed to tilt, the walls folding inwards, compacting the air around them. "You think you can deny the truth?" The voice wailed, rising to a fever pitch, its timbre a mocking cry. Shadows surged forward in retribution, swirling wildly as the mirrors shattered one by one, shards of glass flying like daggers. Rebecca tightened her grip on Danny's arm, yanking him toward the exit. "Run," she shouted, fueled by desperation. They raced toward the door, the glass crunching underfoot, but the shadows were relentless, a thrumming tide of dark longing that almost felt sentient. Just as they neared the door, the shattering sound morphed into a symphony of shrieks, echoes of anguish clawing at her sanity. One pivot too late, the very ground beneath them buckled, cascading down into an endless void. "No!" Rebecca screamed, the abyss pulling her in, her body teetering at the edge of oblivion. A sudden flash of clarity surged in the chaos. There was one chance. Grabbing Danny, she hurled them both toward the wall of mirrors, aiming to shatter through the chaos in a fearless dive. There was a doorway, a glimmer of light amid the dark. Just as the shadows lunged, she felt their fingers graze her back, a horrible, cold sensation that vibrated through her bones. With momentum, they crashed through the surface, breaking into yet another corridor. Only this one felt different, more alive. A faint flickering at the end caught her attention. It pulsed like the box, but invited warmth instead of chilling dread. Breathless, Danny pulled her wrist, his eyes wide. "Are we safe?" But that clarity cracked again, shadows swirling behind them, hungry and relentless. "We have to find out," she gasped. "This way." But as they dashed toward the light, the shadows whispered promises of soul-bearing truths that echoed through the corridor, threatening to ensnare them in despair all over again. Was the real escape ahead, or would it plunge them into something far worse? As they rushed forward, the light flickered ominously. Would it offer hope, or was this just another trap waiting to consume them? Each step felt alive with dread, uncertainty clawing at their heels. And just then, as they reached the doorway, a familiar voice sliced through the air, cold and malevolent. "Did you?" Really think you could escape? Rebecca paused, heart sinking. The shadows coiled tighter, and in that moment one question burned in her mind. What awaited them on the other side? Rebecca and Danny stood frozen at the threshold of the doorway, the flickering light casting elongated shadows that clung to them like a second skin. Mom, I don't want to go back. I can't. Danny's voice cracked, terror shimmering in his eyes. I know, sweetheart, but we can't stay here, not in this darkness. She glanced back towards the swirling shadows, the sinister laughter rippling through the air like a terrible echo from a nightmare. Those whispers of Caldwell taunted her, clawing at her resolve. Did you really think you could escape? Taking a deep breath, Rebecca stepped forward, pulling Danny with her into the light. They surged through the doorway, and for a brief moment, all felt still. Emerging from the oppressive shadows, they landed in a wide-open expanse. Sunlight flooded their senses, warm and alive, bathing them in a golden hue that felt like home. Rebecca blinked, disbelief swirling within her. Mom, is this real? Danny's small hand tightened in hers, his youthful innocence a delicate anchor amidst the chaos. I think it is. Around them stood a park filled with children playing freely, laughter dancing through the air like a sweet melody. But as they stepped further into this unfamiliar reality, Rebecca's heartbeat quickened, a sense of apprehension creeping back as she looked around. Familiar faces flickered within the crowd, neighbors smiling, waving, but then their expressions morphed into twisted masks of dread. Mr. Caldwell appeared in the distance, his grotesque grin wider than before, engulfed in shadows. Remember, Rebecca, the truth won't let you go so easily. His voice wormed into her mind, a reminder that no matter how far she thought she'd traveled, the darkness always loomed. No, she muttered fiercely. You won't take away my son. With renewed strength, she turned to Danny, meeting his gaze. Stay close to me, no matter what happens. Remember, we can face anything together. With every word, warmth surged between them, solidifying their bond amidst the chaos. The laughter faded into a rasping whisper, the darkness swirling around her like a predatory mist. Rebecca and Danny navigated through the heart of the sun-soaked park, shadows lingering just out of sight, waiting for her slip, but she wouldn't falter. What if this is just another trap? Danny whispered, fear seeping into his words. Whatever this place is, it doesn't matter. We choose to stay together, she urged, leading him forward. Let us find a way out. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath them, a fresh wave of darkness pulsing from the edges, consuming all light like an unforgiving tide. The air thickened, pulsating with confusion, illuminating a path back to the shadows they fought so hard to escape. The sinister laughter erupted again, echoing painfully close. Shadows unfurled, seeking them, whispers gliding among leaves. You cannot deny the truth. You are the truth. Danny, we run. Before her son could question, she gripped his hand and surged into the park's depths, weaving between the familiar yet distorted faces of their neighbors, shadows snapping around them. Mom, look! Danny shouted, his voice rising above the ambush of chaos. Ahead, a majestic tree stretched up towards the skies, its light brighter than anything surrounding it. It seemed to pulse with warmth and promise. Just as they reached the tree, Caldwell's shape materialized before them, his presence amplifying the shadows that howled for their retreat. You will choose again, Rebecca, the truth or your son. Enough. Rebecca's voice roared, cutting through the malevolence that threatened to drown them. She felt every ounce of fear, every moment of despair crystallize into her resolve. Turning to Danny, she whispered, You're my truth, Danny. No one can take that away. With that declaration, she took a step toward the tree and its inviting light. It shimmered, urging them closer, blossoms fluttering like fragile memories. Let us choose this life together, she said, pulling Danny along as laughter faded, cries swallowed by the radiance enveloping them as they touched the tree. A brilliant light burst forth, washing over them in waves. It surrounded them, purging the darkness, the shadows screeching their final notes of despair before evaporating into nothingness. In that moment, everything fell silent. Emerging from the light, Rebecca and Danny found themselves standing in front of their home. The familiar creaking of the door, the soft rustle of leaves outside in that moment. the sun shone brightly, a promise of new beginnings. "Mom, we did it." Danny's voice was small, but filled with awe. "We did," she said, pulling him into a tight embrace, relief flooding her senses. "I think we can finally live without fear." Days turned into weeks, their lives gradually reassembling. But the connection they forged in darkness was impossible to forget. It lingered like an unspoken promise. They returned to Maplewood Heights, the neighbors once more smiling and friendly. Yet Rebecca never forgot the shadows that lurked, nor the warnings that haunted the edges of her mind. But they faced the world a little stronger, comprehension deeper. The truth they unearthed was simple. The strongest bond is born from the depths of fear. Together, they would keep the shadows at bay. And as they stepped forward into a future unwritten, Rebecca felt a thrill of hope pulse within her, a truth worth believing. So, what are you waiting for? Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. And for the love of any dark secret you ever faced, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans know the importance of these actions.